Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live, coming to you every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday is our special day, Will, because we do pitch decks. We talk about, hey, what does it take to raise funding, especially in this environment,
Yep.
depending on the stage. We also talk about questions such as, does it unicorn? And today we've got this pitch deck from one of our members. Always appreciate you members sending in your decks to us. If you want your pitch deck reviewed, just let us know. Contact us. If you're a member, if you're not a member, and you're out there on the interwebs, first, like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. Always appreciated. After that, just drop us a line, drop us a comment, and let us know that you want your pitch deck reviewed. Happy to make that happen. We have a little bit of process for you, but we want to make sure that this is a learning experience for everyone. I'm joined here, as always, by founder and CEO of Startups.com, Will, nine-time founder. He's at 5 exits. Looks at pitch decks all day. Will, give us a little insight into how you help founders with pitch decks here at Startups.com.
A lot of it is just zooming out a bit. Founder 10 minutes ago sent me over their pitch essentially, and they said we're Stripe for healthcare. And again, to them that makes total sense, right? But I'm like, okay, so you're doing credit card processing for healthcare? He's like, no, we don't do credit card processing. I'm like, why are you saying you're Stripe for healthcare? and and it's not me being critical. And I think a big part of this is me saying, hey, as an outsider's voice, you're probably so proud right now of being able to say we're Stripe for healthcare. And in your mind, you know exactly what that means. But I'm here to say, and so are you, and this is kind of what we do this part of the show, from a fresh perspective, if you only heard that, it wouldn't mean a goddamn thing. Or at the very least, it would mean something you don't intend it to mean.
Right.
And so I think a big part of our job is just to give you fresh eyes on things and then be able to say, if you wanted it to say exactly what you want it to mean.
Perfect. Yes. And these are the perspectives that you're going to get. And Will, I can assure everybody, he'll give it to you straight, but he'll do it in such a nicest way that you'll feel great after. You'd rather hear from Will in that way, in that context, versus fumble the ball when you're talking to investors.
Yep,
Nothing feels
absolutely.
worse.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Ed, what do we get into?
Well, before I want to interrupt this program and say everything that we do here is brought to you by us here at Startups.com. Well, as always, we take every moment to highlight a special feature we've got, member matching. And this is great because connecting founders is so important. And Will, as I sort of give a demo in terms of what member matching is, we'll talk about the benefits of connecting with other founders, not just talking to us as advisors, but
Yeah.
why should someone use this feature?
I'm a big fan of if you're going to build a startup, get as many people around you as possible, get as many voices as you can. Now, I'm not saying listen to everybody, but get lots of voices. The worst thing you can do, and we just said this a moment ago, is be the only voice in the room, right? So when you say, hey, we're Stripe for healthcare, it makes total sense to you, but then you go to say that to everybody else and they don't know what it means. So what we wanted to build was a feature that allowed you to say, you're all the people that I should probably have around me. Here are the advisors, my peers, which are important, some team members, even if they're not full-time, they're just like, part-time, sometimes work for equity. And I want to build that group of people, but it's really hard to find them all. Like where are these people like that care about startup stuff, that can do exactly what I need them to do, etc. So we built an AI engine where you can just say, this is exactly the people I would love to have, and we'll go find them for you. And these are also people that love working with other startups. So they're way more open to working with you in the formative stages.
As you can see, we've got really cool tools, allows us to really connect and see. You can search across multiple parameters. I've got the different searches that I've saved over here on the left-hand side. So encourage all of you, check it out. Also, something that I want to keep highlighting because I know it comes up, you can expand your personal profile or fine tune it so you can be discovered as well based upon your skills and expertise. And so if I want someone to come in and connect with me, well, this is a great place to add those connections as well.
Yeah, what's really cool about it is for a lot of people, we've been getting this a lot lately, since we launched this just recently. They're saying, yeah, I have some people I want to find, but how do people find me? Right. And it's interesting because obviously that's important. So we set up that page that you showed that says, hey, you can kind of rank like what skills you're known for and even like, how you'd self-assess on proficiency. And it's not super complicated. It's just a little bit more so that the people that are out there that might care about your healthcare experience or your funding experience, et cetera, can find you. And some of those people want to be a co-founder. Some of those people want to be a customer. Some of those people want you as an advisor. There's a million reasons to be listed and detailed on there.
Once again, just another reason to join us here at Startups.com. A lot of free resources, so encourage you to check it out. And anybody can use the member matching, so don't be shy. Here today, Will, we got this deck, and we're going to start off with the cover slide. Just a little caveat. I told the founders, and I tell the founders all the time, feel free to send us a deck before it's all designed up. In fact, getting that feedback before you spend all that time, resource on the design, that can be helpful as well. My decks, Will, when I first start off and I getting feedback, they're just boring black and white text decks.
Yeah, I use Windows text editor, right? And The reason I use it, maybe I'm the only person that still use it, but the reason I use it is because there's no room for any formatting. There's no room for any like graphics or layouts or anything else like that. It forces me to just focus on a tiny amount of text. And I think that really is the way you start to build the heart of a good deck. I think when you have to rely on visuals, it allows you to not tell the story in as much detail. And also with visuals, they're not always perceived the same way. If you show a visual of a woman holding a baby, that means 100 things to 100 people. And the problem is when you put it there with the expectation that everyone would see it the way you do. And that's really the case.
A lot of times founders end up pitching themselves in their own mind. And this is why we have these types of conversations. Take a look.
Yeah.
So right away, here's the cover slide. I trade 5, secure export orders in 5 steps. And then we have a whole statement here, Will. This is probably the most extensive cover slide I've seen. In the $24 trillion global export market, MSMEs often face months-long delays in securing orders. Our self-serve B2B solution reduces that to just minutes. So what do you think overall?
What the hell's an MSME?
That's my first problem.
Okay. So let's pause on that. And again, just, so for folks that are listening for the first time, sometimes we'll get the founder in the audience, et cetera. You got to understand, our job here isn't to be critical. We're not putting on theater here for Shark Tank. Our job is to be helpful and help you get this deck to a place where people don't ask that question. So when you see my first reaction is, what the hell is an MSME? That's not to make you feel bad. That's for me to say, that's probably like a pretty authentic reaction that we have to address.
Let me double click on that, Will. That is precisely the reaction that investors have. So let me set this up. And investors running around, we are trying to cram in all the pitch decks that we possibly can. And between everything else, and so we're looking at them on our mobile phones while we're traveling, and we're fitting them all in. And after you see like maybe 24 of them during the week, it starts to get grating. Like it grates on your nerves. And therefore, those reactions pop out. So have a soft heart and thick skin and understand that we really are simulating the environment, what investors will do and how they'll react to your deck.
You bet. And the only person that knew what that meant was the founder and then people in their immediate circle, right? I guarantee if we went to all the people in the audience right now and we say, we'll give you $1,000 if off the top of your head, you could tell me what an MSME is, they probably couldn't do it. Now that said, I'm a huge fan of not using acronyms ever for exactly this reason.
Yep.
Partially because they sometimes also have different meanings in different contexts or different industries. CPA means certified public accountant. It also means cost per acquisition, right? And when we start to drop in these types of acronyms with an expectation that everybody knows what they are, it's dangerous, especially if the situation or the sentence doesn't make sense if you don't know what the context of the acronym is.
Right. And so right away to this founder, you confused us right on your cover slide. And that's not the best way to start things off. And I'm just going to point out that it even goes before that. Will made a comment like, what is an MSME? It's even a mouthful right here. But I got lost right at this sub line right here. Secure export orders in 5 steps. Secure export orders for what? And on top of which, you've got I trade 5 in your name. So immediately my mind went to like financial trading because that's my context, what I'm used to. And then export orders. So this whole thing right here was very confusing right off the bat. And so I would just recommend going, let's get rid of this and let's focus on just explaining, helping, manufacturers export products to other countries easier. Just something straightforward that we can understand, because right away you've lost us, and that's not a good starting point.
I'm always a big fan of stripping away as many things as possible, Ed. So if I've got I trade in the middle, if I've got I trade up top, and I've got I trade in the bottom left, I just said it 3 times. I only need it once, right? Now, again, are these massive issues you're going to get funded or not funded based on that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What we look at in a deck is we strip out everything we can that doesn't tell the core story just for a matter of focus. I want you to think of when you're building your deck as every element, every word, every image, every caption as a distraction. See, we think of the opposite. We think the more stuff we add, the more comprehensive and detailed the story is. So what ends up happening is we're like, well, if we add this citation, then someone will also go research the citation. That will happen never. We add this extra chart, image, bullet point. It'll just help tell the story better. It will not. It will confuse people even more. So our goal is to say as little as possible and maintain the core focus and thread.
Wonderful. Yeah, I really like that, because every little extra thing, you're just adding more friction. Yeah. And we don't need it, right? Let's make it as easy as possible. One of the things that I heard, Will, maybe you got some comments on this, is don't make the investors work any harder than they need to understand your deck, because inherently investors, it's not that they're lazy people. Their minds want to be lazy because of pattern recognition, how efficient. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, it's like anything else. It's like if you look at your inbox today, you don't pour over every single email. You look for quick context clues, something in the subject, something in the first sentence, maybe something in who the person's sending, and that's it. And your mind is trained to burn through those signals. When I see salespeople send me emails, and I can tell it's a very like long, well thought out email, I'm like, why would I read any of this? Like, before you even sent it to me, you should be asking yourself, what was in the subject line that I was going to absolutely want to read? Why is this contextual to me? We get so busy, Ed, and distracted in our own worlds, we forget to think about the context of the people we're sending it.
Let's talk about context just for a moment. You reminded me of a conversation I was having with some founders today. Will, walk us through the difference between a deck that you yourself present live and in person and a deck that you'd send out, which is the type of deck that we're trying to critique and review. Show us the difference.
Okay, so when we build our decks, we almost always initially build our decks as founders with the idea that we're going to present the content. We almost like build it as if we're presenting it while we're saying it. Okay. The problem with that is that us being in front of the deck to present it is the tiniest use case. It's the one we're actually building for, but it's the tiniest use case. The reason for that is because every investor is going to ask you to send the deck ahead before you ever take the meeting. Now, just to be sure, that does not mean to ever add an attachment in your communications. It's always a link. The last thing you want to see is a 50 megabyte PowerPoint attachment on your iPhone while you're driving, right? Yeah. Small point, but it happens enough that it's worth bringing up. But the point is, the investor is going to want to do a very cursory review of the deck to determine whether they should meet with you at all. They're not making an investment decision. They're making a sorting decision. What does that mean? That means in a given day, as an investor, I'll see what, Ed, 20 decks, right?
Maybe more.
In my first job, first pass isn't to read every deck. It's to sort every deck, looking for the quickest, fastest context clues that tell me this isn't for me. Those clues would be like, oh, this is an industry I don't invest in. This is a stage I don't invest in. This is the most horrible deck I've ever seen in my life. It looks like it was written in crayon. I'm clearly not going to go after that founder. So my first pass is just to take the 20 decks and get it down to 5. So the difference between 20 and 5 is huge. There's a bunch of quick things I'm gonna scrape out. Now, when I've got 5, I'm gonna spend 5 minutes reading the deck. I'm not gonna take the day off and sit in my easy chair next to my fireplace and pour a coffee and pour over every single slide and just be like, wow, let me think about how this business could be 10 times bigger and let me follow all these citations. Like, no one gives a shit, right, about any of that. Here's how I'm gonna process it. And you're gonna watch Ed and I do it in slow motion because we're gonna do it over the course of an hour. But if you were to just fast forward to the highlights of what we're saying, I'm going to say, title doesn't make any sense. Problem slide, still don't understand it. Solution slide, oh, I kind of get they must be in something like this. Total addressable market seems ridiculously big. That can't possibly be right. Red flag. Team, doesn't look like they went to work for a public company or went to an Ivy League school. Not the end of the world. But again, these are the little things that I'm looking for. And parse through it like that in ways you'd never think. You're like, but I wrote all this great content. Cool. No one's going to read it. We're going to parse it quickly and decide whether it's worth meeting with you. Then you can present it in person and fill in all the blanks.
Will, let me make it more dramatic. I love the way that you position it out there, but I will horrify founders even more. How I went through it, I was like, do I see anything that makes sense or stands out that I want to pay attention to? And then it's no. Deck is done. Like, I don't even justify. You gave like logic. I'm even beyond that. I'm just going no through the whole thing. And I would say in the day when I scan decks, that would be like 90%. Now I would say in the later stage decks, the decks were pretty darn good because you're talking about mature startups, but early stage decks, I would say 80 to 90% decks. It was a wash in like 90 seconds.
Ed, it just occurred to me. In all the time that we've been doing this, we've never simulated a speed run of a deck. Okay, we're going to go through this deck in detail, but I'm going to ask you to give me 30 seconds to speed run this deck. I'll hit next, like we're on a game show, and I'll tell you exactly what my first impressions are of every side. I haven't seen this deck before.
Okay, now do you want to do that up front just to tear off the Band-Aid, or do you want to do that after?
Right up front, because now you know that I don't actually know what's going to be on each of these slides, and I'm going to tell you my exact stream of consciousness.
Oh, man, this is going to be good. Hey, everyone, this is a special day. You get front row seats. Grab your popcorn. Okay, Will, you ready?
Ed's hair looks amazing. Stream of consciousness. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, starting now.
$1 trillion export market, no such thing. MSMEs, I don't know what that is. Months-long delays, I'm not sure what that means. Self-serve B2B, Okay, it's something to do with B2B. Next. Trillion global market, securing exporters, lengthy, costly, and unpredictable. Okay. I don't really know what that means, but like I understand what those words mean, but I don't have the context. Jeopardizing pre-sale efforts. I don't know what a pre-sale effort is, and increasing survival risks of MSMEs. I still don't know what that means. I'm not going to read any of the other information. Next slide. Our app streamlines the months-long cumbersome process of securing export orders into just 5 simple steps, saving time, effort, costs for MSMEs. I still don't know what an MSME is, so I have no context for what problem we're actually solving. And I don't understand why it's going to be 5 steps because I don't understand why it's not already 5 steps. The context is that I know that. Next one.
Okay, let me interrupt, Will.
Yeah.
Indicate for us at which point in time you stop even going into the next slides, because we're taking for granted that you're going to look at every slide, but that's not the case.
100%, man. 100%. I'm gonna hold on to it for a second. I'm gonna hold on to it for a second because I'm waiting for a context clue, which sometimes happens later in the deck, but that's the founder's job, not mine. Okay, solution, next one. Market size is 24 trillion. No, it's not. I've seen a million market sizes. They're never 24 trillion. They must be talking about a market size that isn't their actual market. It's like the gross product of everything. And all the notes below, I'm never going to read. I'm a CFO, and this is way more information than I could possibly synthesize in the next 10 years. Next slide. How it works. Product. Exporters and importers search, find, connect, manage based on HS codes. I have no idea what that means. Pricing, manage, discuss, and agree on export pricing. Okay. Compliance, obtain required permits. Finance, submit financial instruments. Order and shipping with export order at hand, shipping. Okay. PPCFO equals XM orders. What the hell does that mean? Let's keep going. Competition. They are data resellers. We are deal facilitators. We can integrate such data from various government sources to improve our platform. I'm assuming this is a real slide. Like this is a placeholder. Don't know how that tells me anything about the competition. Let's keep
Will,
going.
I've seen competition slides like this though.
Okay, yeah, this means nothing to me.
Okay.
Let's keep going. Go-to-market strategy, web sales, and affiliates. Okay, cool. Framework, operate B2B, DIY online. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Offer white label API. Okay. Exporters, trade bodies, trade associations. Okay. The go-to-market strategy is web sales and affiliate. I don't really know what web sales means to you in this case, you being the reseller or the product offer. Affiliates, I kind of get that you're going to white label to somebody, but let's keep going. Founding team. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to immediately look to see what companies or brands he's worked at that I recommend. Mastering trade policy at Harvard. That's all I saw. So 25 years in trade and shipping could mean anything. It could mean you're a dock worker. 150 plus international consulting projects. Awesome. For whom? Was it McKinsey? Different level. All I was able to key off of on a known quantity, a known brand is Harvard, which is a big deal. We welcome referrals to potential co-founders, C-suite, product managers. Not sure why that point is on the founding team. That's okay. Let's go to the next one. Traction. After 4 iterations, we have a work in progress MVP. I do understand that. iTrades 5. I'm not sure if you're expecting me to go there. Android app. I'm not sure if you're expecting me to download it. So far, I still don't know anything about the app or the MVP. I think you're expecting me to go through each of these links and dive in, which I just simply won't do. Contact VJ. Okay. Funding. Oh, Ed, did you jump over or did
I
the funding
did.
slide somehow?
I did.
Okay, got it.
Just to protect the information.
Awesome. We're raising $2 million seed round to complete MVP in 9 months and acquire test customers. Awesome. I understand exactly what that means. Thank you. Keep going. Nailed it. Exit strategy. Nobody uses an exit strategy. You're going to get some investors that are like, where's your exit strategy, et cetera. I'm telling you, Ed, we see thousands of pitch decks. We ship thousands of pitch decks. None of them have an exit strategy. Typically, an exit strategy is something I would put on a deck if it were like we have an existing business that we're trying to prep for a sale to like a private equity fund or something. But everybody knows what your exit strategy is. It's either an IPO or a sale.
That's it. There was your speed run. I'm curious if any of the audience had questions, but will overall, just reflect on that, if you had to wrap up, obviously it's like, what's the final verdict? Let's just give it to everybody straight.
The deck is a C. Okay, Ed, we talk about this all the time. Now what do I remember? I verbalized everything that was going through my head, so I didn't take in anything you didn't hear, if that makes sense. That's right. Why I was mumbling and everything, because that's how fast my brain was reading through it and how fast I could see it. I know it's something to do with exports. I remember that the market size slide was insane, meaning like that wasn't a properly sized market. I could be wrong, by the way, but I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm 98% sure, just based on the size of the market, that I'm probably right. But again, what do I know? We'll find out. I remember that guy went to Harvard, or he did something at Harvard. Again, these are the keywords that matter. I remember I don't understand their go-to-market strategy. I'm sure it exists, but I didn't know enough about the business, the go-to-market strategy to have context. And I know this is doing something in software to streamline something. That's it. That's what I just took from the whole deck. And now, just a couple points of reference here. I do this for a living.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not some random person that Ed pulled off the street to say, like, hey, can you look at your first pitch deck? I've been looking at thousands and thousands of pitch decks.
Man, if I pulled you off the
billions of dollars.
If I pulled you off the street, Will, I'd be a genius. Just letting you know. But yeah, it's not.
I'm not saying I'm like the greatest thing is sliced bread. I'm saying I am a very experienced, practiced person that does this for a living. And that's how I just digested your deck. Now, you could say, well, but an investor might do this, and of course, we're all different people. I'm saying if I have 20 other decks to look at, and by the way, I actually do. So do you, Ed. We look
Yeah.
at people's decks all day long.
Oh yeah.
I have 20 other decks to look at. That's as much time and attention as that deck's going to get. And I'm going to make my sorting decision, not my investment decision, based on what you just saw. When my business partner reaches over and says, hey, how was that last deck you looked at? I'm going to say, I don't really understand the market they were going after. It seemed like it was like 24 trillion. He's going to laugh. And I'm going to be like, but the guy went to Harvard. He's probably pretty smart, might be worth talking to. Think about how much time and effort was put into that deck and probably how significant this product is, Ed. And that's all I took away from it.
Right.
I say this not as a knock to this founder. I have respect for this founder, all founders. I say this as a reflection of we rarely get to see how something gets digested.
Yeah. It's a inside look behind the scenes, however you want to call it. Well, I'm curious. Let's discuss how founders get here, because clearly we've established this founder, and I met this founder, right? This founder is not, again, just somebody willy-nilly, some kid dreaming. This founder clearly has a lot of knowledge. How does a founder go from being smart and probably has things figured out in their mind to a pitch deck that's so vague, ambiguous, convoluted, laborious to digest? Walk us through what the mechanisms happen to get us here.
Initially, and this happens to all of us, myself included, Ed, is initially we have it all in our head, but having it in our head and turning it into something that we can translate to the rest of the world is a giant delta. And I think we vastly underestimate how hard it is to take a concept out of our head and put it into the world in a way that's not only digestible, but it's excitable. And Ed, I wrestle with this all the time. We'll get a founder on this program, right? And they'll start telling us about their idea. And I'll be like, I love your idea. And nothing about what's in your pitch deck is saying that, right? And you and I deal with this all the time. This is part of the process, right? I'm not picking on any one founder. Every founder goes through it. It's a rite of passage. There's one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, the value of what's in your head and what you want to put into the world is about to get lost because your ability to translate it out into the world is shot. It's fixable, but right now it's not good.
Let me add to this conversation, and I'm speaking specifically because I know the founders, and we've got some great founders in the audience, Will. Like, that's what I love about Startups.com. We're attracting some really great people. But how we end up in this spot, and it's one of the things, and I found the evidence to prove it. Founders end up falling in love with the solution, and something called innovator's bias. And they love their solution, and then they have a solution looking for a problem. And I warn founders about this all the time, but it's just a natural thing. And so you take a look at this traction slide, and everyone, Will always says, hey, you need to have three things on your traction slide. State of the product, you have to share user validation, and then some type of growth. We've got all this in terms of, this is a state of the product and a lot of ideas, but 1,000 unique monthly visitors with no marketing, like, that doesn't mean anything's been validated. And Will, one of the things I know founders end up doing is they end up trying to back into the market and the demand. And if founders would have taken time to go and talk to the users, really understand their problem, they'd be communicating their value proposition from that perspective versus we build a whole bunch of stuff. Because this is another knock that I have here is all of a sudden, and will attest to you all out there, I'm the crypto guy. I love crypto. I love blockchain. I'm totally bullish on it. This is the first time all this stuff shows up. We've never even mentioned crypto and blockchain up to this moment. So to me, it appears as if this founder, out of good intentions, out of their intelligence, has been building a lot of stuff. I don't know if they've been talking to customers and really validating that this is a problem worth building around. And that is going to be a massive red flag.
Well, I also think that if you go back to that slide for a minute, Ed, on the traction slide, my concern is that we're not answering specific questions that the investor has, okay? So let's back up a little bit. After 4 iterations, we have a work in progress MVP. Why do I need to know that you've had 4 iterations?
Exactly, yeah.
All I need to know is, where does it stand right now? I don't care if you've been working on this for 3 days or 3 years. Just tell me where things are right now. What I'd like you to be able to say is that we have an MVP that can process 70% of current orders. That's all I care about. I just care about the outcome. I don't know that if the Android app is important, but we could say we have a web/mobile MVP that can process 70% of orders. I made that part up, the 70% of orders. I'm just trying to explain. Ed, help me understand, because you're my translator. Why is there the own crypto token ITR there?
I have no idea. That's the problem.
Okay.
There's no justification. I don't know the context of why we'd even be mentioning crypto or tokens at this point in time.
Okay. Well, what I do need to know, this is kind of more my point. What I absolutely need to know on this page are three things: the state of the product, which we've talked about a little bit here; validation with customers. We got 1,000 unique monthly visitors with no marketing. That's not a ton of validation, and I want to be mindful. Like in the early stages, anything is some level of validation, but I probably want to give that a little bit more context. 1,000 monthly visitors, meaning like we're seeing lots of traffic from really highly valuable customers. One of my favorite hacks, Ed, and we've talked about this before. If you're currently talking to 10 customers, 10 prospective buyers, don't tell me you're talking to 10 prospective buyers. Tell me you're talking to 10 prospective buyers who collectively represent $2 million worth of potential orders for you.
Yeah, here's the thing, Will. I'm going to expand on that. When I see vague, ambiguous metrics or monolithic numbers that don't give me detail, I immediately think one of two things, and it's just because I've been conditioned that way, and I'm a cynical person. One, they're faking it, embellishing something, or two, they're vanity metrics, and they're really not going to help me make a decision.
But there's also, agreed. But there's also often value in those metrics or that activity that we just forget to express. Let's go back to those 1,000 visitors. If we look at those 1,000 visitors and we just call them website visitors, well, then we didn't give it any value, okay? Because 1,000 visitors means nothing in the context of website traffic, because millions and tens of millions of visitors exist. What we failed to do is talk about the value of those visitors, meaning who are those visitors? If you were to say we got 1,000 visits all from buyers of Fortune 500 companies, that's a way different number.
Sure.
Right? Than just 1,000 people who clicked on the wrong Google link. Right? That's why I said a moment ago, if we're talking to 10 customers, that's going to sound like nothing. But if we say we're talking to 10 customers that represent our first $2 million in revenue, that number is totally different. If we were to say of the 1,000 website visitors that we've gotten signups from this company, this company, this company. I have to say who the person is, just who the company is, recognizable brands. That makes me go, oh, damn, someone from Best Buy signed up? That's a big deal. The third thing that we need to do is we need to show any level of growth or traction or action if we have. So if I were to start to say that our volume among our early beta users is increasing by 10% week over week, month over month. Remember that for startups, we use very tight windows, weeks and months. So week over week growth matters, month over month growth matters. We don't use year over year because we've only been around for 9 months. That wouldn't make any sense, right? You have to change your metric. Again, what's the state of the product? What's the state of customer validation? And what kind of growth are we experiencing? However we want to express that.
Right. So, Will, let's now go on the other side and go and almost do a speed run in terms of how we could fix this deck. So now we're going to put our advisor hats on and say, all right, Will, based on the reactions that we had investors, what are the quick recommendations on what the founder should do with the problem slide? Let's start here. And what should they be working on next?
Okay. Let's unpack it a little bit. In the $24 trillion global export market, I think that's fine, right? I think a global export market probably means products, is my guess, right? Securing the export order. Remember, I don't know what an export order is.
Right.
Okay. That this is where you start to come off the rails and you're like, well, how would you not know what it is? You know what it is because you live in that business, right? I could rattle off 50 things that you don't know what they are, that I know what they are because I'm in that world. Right? Let's stick with that. Securing an export order is a lengthy, costly, and unpredictable process. I don't know why, though, Ed, right?
Right.
Okay. Is it jeopardizing pre-sale efforts? What's a pre-sale effort, Ed, in this context?
I'm going to say, so if I'm digging and I'm extrapolating, I'm going to say, okay, so I'm an exporter and I am selling out there and someone says, great, I'll take 10,000 of your widgets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, well, I don't have the ability to create that paperwork or that order to get that process going. That's where I'm thinking right now.
Okay. And of course, these are for MSMEs. And we all know that means micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises.
Oh, we do. Yeah, okay.
We do. Thanks to one of our audience members who Googled that for me.
Yes, thank you.
For 3 seconds. We definitely don't want to spell that out, but we also don't want to use an acronym nobody understands. For example, like SMBs, right? Small, medium-sized businesses is a fairly well-known term. If you're talking to investors, I'd be surprised if they didn't know what an SMB is. However, I still wouldn't use SMBs. In other words, in my deck, if this were as an example, I would spell it out. Because if there's even a 10% chance people misunderstand it, I failed. And Ed, what happens when we break the problem statement?
Well, everything else, it's a chain reaction. Everything else goes broke.
Chain reaction. Great way to say it. One thing I want to add here, Ed, is we've got low exports equals slow economic growth equals weak currency equals bad sovereign rating equals high employment. Who gives a shit? This isn't time to give me a macroeconomic lesson. And again, I understand the spirit of why it's there, right? You're trying to show consequence, right?
Right.
This chain reaction. No one cares. What matters on this slide is that I understand the problem for MSMEs.
Right. And so let me take a crack at it just from my understanding. If I said, Will, in this statement, problem statement is there are 10 million manufacturers that are trying to ship their products to other countries, but struggle to fill orders because current software is outdated and they're still using manual pen and paper to fill orders, costing them, let's say, $300 million in annual sales. That would be more along the lines of the type of, and I just totally made that up on the spot. I feel like Eminem trying to do a rap, right?
Freestyling
Right?
the Snoop Dogg of pitch deck.
That would be more in line with just something basic, straight and forward.
No, okay, so let's dig in a little bit because you said a couple things that I want to key off of. You said current manual process. You made that up, is my guess.
Yeah, I did.
Yep. Okay, which is fine, but I'm saying that would have been important to know. You said outdated, which could be true but non-specific.
Right. Which is the reason I went to manual quickly.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, again, we're jeopardizing pre-sale efforts, but only the founder here knows what that means in context to this industry.
Yes.
So what we would ask the founder to do is zoom out a bit and say, obviously, there's some sort of wonky process, okay, in trying to get these export orders out the door. Let's try to unpack what that process actually is. This is us brainstorming, and then see if we can say it in as few words as possible so that the audience understands at the end of this sentence what the hell an export order is.
Right. Yes. And this is a great exercise because, and I'm hoping the founders here. Yeah, we have a great founder, Will, who, really has a product that I think can make a lot of waves. And I was asking him because he was struggling with his problem statement and who he should target in the size. And I asked him to go back and tell me, when you initially thought of this, who were you thinking about looking at to say, oh, I know I could help them? Who did you have a compassion for?
Great. I love that.
Right?
Yep.
And it was crazy, Will. Not surprising, though. As I began drawing out, he gave me everything that you should have put in your pitch deck, right? It just made total sense. I was like, there's your market, there's the reason. And I asked him this. I said, so you're saying these people would run to you and say, thank God for you. Thank you so much for solving this problem. I've been looking for it. It's a gap. It's underserved. We're underestimated, underrepresented. And he was like, yes, absolutely. And I said, hallelujah. An investor wants to know that. That's the way to do it. And so often I explain this because founders, go back to the people that you were trying to help and find out or explain their situation. Just like Will said, what process are they using? Are they still using carbon copy, right, dot matrix printers and pens and, dry erase ink all over the place? Go do that, right? And then you will find what to put in your pitch deck.
100%. Okay, let's go to the solution.
Okay, so our app streamlines the months-long cumbersome process of securing export orders into just 5 simple steps, saving time, effort, and cost for MSMEs.
Okay, so a couple things here. That's great that we streamline it. Remember, we still don't know exactly what the problem was. Streamline it to 5 simple steps only makes sense if I knew that it was 642 steps before that.
Right.
Okay. And I also don't need to know that it's 5 simple steps if you're just telling me that it does it in 10% of the time, right?
Yep.
So again, when you say 5 simple steps, you, founder, have context for why that's faster or why that's better than the current state of the state. However, I have no idea what this process is. Maybe the process is 3 steps and you're making it longer.
Sure.
Right? You easily forget that I don't have the context that you have. Now, we're saying that we're streamlining the months long, but then we're saying we're saving time, effort, and cost. Didn't we just say the same thing twice?
Right.
If we're streamlining something and removing a cumbersome, then it's obviously saving time. It's obviously saving effort. We just said that. In this case, we're kind of saying the same thing a couple of times. When we're very limited on our inventory of allowable words, we don't get the opportunity for duplicity. Every word has to introduce something new.
Right. You don't want to be redundant. On top of which, Will, I'm going to add things like what you said, the fact that we didn't define this as a problem. When you say cumbersome process, well, that's your opinion. On top of which, we have no way to measure. So investors want to see hard numbers. So Will mentioned in 10% of the time. If we've established that, then 10% of the time is a measurable unit. But if you just say, oh, it saves time and effort, you'll love it, and cost, well, that doesn't mean anything. That's really kind of a hyperbolic, markety, hypey, buzzy thing that you might say, which doesn't move the needle for investors whatsoever. Why? We're not customers, one, and two, we've seen dozens of these statements before we get here.
If I were to say in the problem statement, for $24 trillion worth of export orders, it takes an average of 3.5 months to secure an export order and get it to the point of fulfillment, which costs exporters, small businesses, $52 billion. And on the next solution slide, I say, our app reduces the amount of time it takes to get an export order down to 4 days, which will increase the amount of revenue that a small business or exporter can do by a factor of $53 billion. So just a couple of touch points. And I was just kind of bumbling through that. What I want to be able to say is, hey, founder, you just told me that you have a number in your head for how many days, weeks, months this takes. Set me up with that on the problem statement. Show me how horrible it is. But more importantly, show me why that matters. Maybe something taking a couple months to procure an order doesn't matter. What's the consequence? Who cares? I'm ordering way in advance. Who cares how long it takes? Now, if you were to say, yeah, no, that's not the way it works. If something takes you months, here is the consequence of something taking months. Founder, you know what that consequence is. You never told your audience.
Right. And Will just illustrated something that I want all of you founders who are watching and going to be watching this, talk about the status quo, the current state, and how much it costs, and be exact with your numbers.
Yep.
Then you can say, now with our wonderful solution, customers no longer have to go through all that hellscape. And the more painful it is, and they can solve it, then, as we always say here, the investor starts to go, wow, wait a second. Users, customers are really going to want this. That gets me excited. I'm going to make money.
Okay, let's go to the market size slide, because this is one of my quintessential pet peeves of market sizes problems. By the way, whenever I see the word trillion in a market size, there's a 99% chance this market it's not sized properly. But let's go back through the math. Ed, let's see if we can look at this. The total SMEs, the TAM, we've got 300 million MSMEs. Doesn't really roll off the tongue. They export $24 trillion imports in USD. Ed, why is there an export and an import number?
Because I guess we're trying to solve for both sides, like both directions.
We don't want a tariff imbalance here, Ed. Okay, so thought we taught you Canadians. Oh, you can't get enough of that. Anyway, targeting ICs in the U.S. market with less than 500 people exporting to one country only is 279,000 MSMEs. Okay, then why were we talking about 300 million? Okay, maybe that's a broader term. Pro forma sales minus subscription fee, or is subscription fees, 5-year total. Oh shit. Okay, I'm a CFO and have been for 25 years. I do this for a living. I have no idea what this means. This is a good example of when the founder knows what they're talking about. I'm sure your numbers are accurate. They're just damn near impossible to understand. They are if you walk me through them, but that's sort of the point. What I think you're saying, total order value could be up to $56,000 times 279,000 potential buyers is $15.6 billion. That's the total addressable market. Ed, what am I missing?
I'm still lost. I'm trying to process, but yeah, sounds right.
Ed, let me put on my CFO hat and try to walk you through it as a CFO I ideally would, which is to tell you as little as possible and just tell you what to focus on.
Sure.
Here's how I'd say it. Hey, Ed, in our world, in the export world, there's about 280,000 customers. On average, the amount that they'd be able to spend with us would be $56,000 per year. By the way, that's if that's true. That may not be. Which means 280,000 potential customers who would potentially spend with us. It has to be with us.
Yeah.
Because I think we're saying the value of the exports themselves, but let's just assume this was revenue to us. It would have to be, in order for our total addressable market to be $15.6 billion. Now, with that said, I'm fairly sure I'm reading that wrong. But here's the lesson on how TAM works. Because this is a lot of people are going to watch this video later, and most people don't understand how TAM works. Here's the easiest way to remember. TAM, total addressable market, is the dollar value of if every possible customer only bought from you. Every possible customer only bought from you. That is your total addressable market. It's very difficult to have a market that's bigger than that, because everybody's already bought from you. If you're saying, well, our market's even bigger than that. Well, how could it be? I just told you every single customer only bought from you. You're saying you have a market bigger than that. And some people will say, well, yeah, but in the future, we're going to sell these other products that will, be an even bigger. Awesome. And when someday when we have the discussion about that market and that business, we'll talk about that TAM. This is the TAM for today.
Yes. And on top of which, the second part of that is, here's our total addressable market, but we are going to focus on this segment of the market. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so I'm about to give you $2 million. If I recall, that was in the funding slide. I'm about to give you $2 million. Where are you going to start in this process where you're going to start spending $2 million? Now, you're not going to start with the $15 billion market, okay? You're going to start in something far smaller. But there are two things I want to know about this place you're going to start. What market is it specifically? You're going to say, we're going to look for exporters that are specifically doing NVIDIA cards coming out of China, right? The one thing that's not coming out of China, we're going to it. The worst example ever. But we're going to do this specific customer for this dollar. And the second part is, and here is why. We're going after this segment first because we personally have relationships with those vendors. Those are exporters that we already know. We're going after this industry first because it's Seattle and we live in Seattle. Give me a specific reason why we can thumb the scale for this early market. What special sauce do we have for this early market? Which, by the way, probably doesn't expand. By definition, it shouldn't. But this is the one place, like I said, where we can thumb the scale a bit. And here's what you're really trying to say. Look, man, if it doesn't work with the people we have in our backyard that we can thumb the scale on, it's definitely not going to work with the rest of the industry. So this is our best possible shot at seeing if we get some traction.
And I'm going to say, based on this, because I got lost, but now that we're walking through it, I'm starting to see, I think what they did is to combine their business model, how much they're charging, and they tried to show all their math.
But hold on, Ed, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Yeah.
that's not entirely wrong. I mean, like,
Yeah.
In order to get to a TAM, you would have to be able to express your business model, ergo the amount of total order value, like in this case, that people would spend. I usually try to use it in the context of 1 year. How much will customers spend in 1 year with us?
Right.
Right.
And that was to my point. We saw that this individual has consulted with over 150,000 contracts. So I know this is all in his head. It just hasn't come out yet. So
Sure.
I'm going to say,
Part of the process.
in summary, what we're dealing with here is that the internal reality of how the startup works in its head and the external perception of how we understand it, there's such a gap here that it's going to just completely hurt your ability to actually engage with investors.
I also want to give the founder a few shout outs here in a couple different ways. We always do this and we always will. Number one, it is hard to do this, right? I know there's a lot of founders in the audience right now. Some of them have gone through this process with us. It is brutal to basically stand naked in front of everybody and say, tell me what you think, right? It's hard to do. And we thank you for doing it because, again, you're not just helping people in this room and we're helping with your deck. You're also helping thousands of other people that are viewing these videos and be like, oh, damn. The second thing I want to say is thank you. Thanks for letting us do this. Our job, like, we don't get any pleasure out of like making you feel bad about your deck at all. Like, that's the last thing. In fact, usually by the end of these, I'm so pumped up about the business that we're talking about. Like, I want to go co-found it with the founder, right?
Sure.
So unlike an investor who kind of like almost enjoys, I hate to say it, but they do, tearing down your deck, I enjoy finding things to go fix and improve, right? And Ed, I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yes. Let me add one more point to that.
Yeah.
You could watch every single video that Will has ever done, go through our course, attend all his Pitch Deck Doctor workshops, watch all my videos, get all the feedback, and still show up with a deck that is missing things because you're in it. And if there's anything, it's an illustration that you're going to go through this hundreds of times. And so that's
as you
okay.
Should.
Yeah.
As
and
you should.
To this founder, you took the first step of like 1,000 steps. So that's what we want to give you kudos for.
You bet. Also, get good at this. Get good at saying, tell me what you think. Get good at asking for feedback. Get good at processing feedback, right? Because most founders, they go into this process, Ed, and they say, here's my deck. Does it get an A? And we're like, it gets a D. And they're angry. They're pissed, right? They're like, oh, I'm supposed to do work and get A's. Like, dude, that's not how this business works. This business works where you go in and say, I have no goddamn clue what I'm doing. Tell me how to get closer to doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Now that is not a reflection of your incapability as a founder. It's the opposite. It's a good, confident founder says, I don't need to know the answer. I need to find the answer. And my job is to ask questions to pursue the answer. This is an example.
Right. Your relentless pursuit helps you as a founder build your startup, but is also going to help you with a startup pitch deck. But really, nothing's preparing you for this. Nobody takes you aside and says, now that you're a founder, you're going to have to learn how to do pitch decks this way. It's just something we all pick up by necessity. And that's the reason I'm excited to share. And we love doing this for all of you. So another request for you out there, share this with someone that you think. And if you see someone else's pitch deck or they're struggling to say, oh, you know what, I just watched this video and Will and Ed, went through this pitch deck. Maybe you should watch that and get everybody prepared. Help your peers out because we're founders helping other founders out here. Share the love with everybody. And then do not be afraid whatsoever of contacting us and sending us your pitch decks. We're happy to do this for you.
Yeah, it's what we love to do. And just to build on what you said, Ed, take what you learned here and go tap another founder on the shoulder and say, hey, I just kind of learned this thing. Totally lie and say that you figured it out on your own. You didn't even get it from us, right? So you can look super extra smart. Right. And just go help somebody. Our job is to keep planting more and more entrepreneurial seeds. Every person that watches this video is another seed that's going to go on to help countless other founders. So help us plant more seeds.
That's it for us. Couldn't have said it better myself. We are here every Tuesday again and look forward to doing more of your pitch decks. As always, let us know. Do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe. We love to hear feedback. Will, always a pleasure. I'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.